In November 1944, the Gestapo hanged 13 people from lampposts in Cologne. Not soldiers. Not resistance fighters with weapons caches or underground networks backed by Allied intelligence. Children. The oldest was 25. Several were teenagers. One was 16 years old. To understand the Edelweiss Pirates, you first have to understand what the Hitler Youth was designed to do. Membership wasn't optional. By 1939, it was legally mandatory for all German boys aged 10 and older. The program ran on a simple premise. If you controlled a child's time completely, their evenings, their weekends, their summers, their language, their friendships, their songs, you controlled the person they would become. And for millions of German children, it worked. But in the industrial working-class cities of Western Germany, Cologne, Düsseldorf, Wuppertal, Essen, something unexpected happened. Groups of teenagers began pushing back. Not in the language of politics, not with pamphlets or manifestos. They pushed back the way teenagers push back, with music, with wandering, with deliberately choosing their own company over the company the state had chosen for them. They hiked through forests on weekends instead of attending Hitler Youth drills. They sang folk songs and American jazz, music the regime had explicitly banned. They wore their own unofficial uniforms, dark shorts, check shirts, white socks pulled high, and sewn onto the collar or the lapel, an Edelweiss flower. It was on its surface a small act of refusal. The Reich did not see it that way. The Edelweiss Pirates were not a single organization. That's important to understand. There was no central leadership, no membership list, no hierarchy. They were loosely connected groups spread across the Rhine and Ruhr regions, going by different names in different cities. The Navajos in Cologne, the Kittelbach Pirates in Düsseldorf, the Roving Dudes in Essen. What they shared was a sensibility, a refusal. Many came from working-class Catholic families, communities that had their own deep suspicions of the Nazi project long before the war, made those suspicions dangerous. Their fathers had been socialists, trade unionists, men whose political world had been dismantled piece by piece through the 1930s. The teenagers had grown up watching that dismantling. They had been handed an alternative world to inhabit, the Hitler Youth, the rallies, the certainty, and some of them had looked at it and thought, no. They were not ideologues. Most Edelweiss Pirates couldn't have given you a political speech. What they had was an instinct. A deep, almost physical resistance to being told what to feel and what to become. That instinct, in Nazi Germany, was enough to get you killed. Through the late 1930s, the Reich's response to the Edelweiss Pirates was contemptuous. Round them up, shave their heads, send them home with a warning. The Gestapo filed reports calling them hooligans, criminals, asocials, the regime's all-purpose category for anyone who didn't fit. But the groups didn't dissolve. They reformed. New members joined. The flower appeared again on new collars. By the early 1940s, the tone had changed. Germany was at war. The economy of tolerance had collapsed entirely. The Edelweiss Pirates began doing things that moved beyond passive refusal, distributing Allied leaflets that had been dropped by British aircraft, sheltering army deserters, helping forced laborers and escaped prisoners move through the city. In Cologne, which had been devastated by Allied bombing, a group of pirates made contact with a communist-led underground resistance cell. They began acquiring weapons. They attacked Hitler Youth patrols. They targeted a Gestapo officer. This was no longer a story about teenagers skipping drills and singing banned songs. The Gestapo understood that. In the autumn of 1944, they moved. His name was Bartholomäus Schinck. Everyone called him Barthel. He was 16 years old. Barthel Schinck was one of the leaders of the Cologne Navajos, the Edelweiss pirate group operating in the ruins of the city. He had been arrested before, released. He had come back. On the 10th of November, 1944, one day after the 6th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Gestapo hanged Barthel Schenk and 12 others in public from lampposts along Ehrenfeld's main street. No trial, no formal sentencing. A summary execution, carried out as a public display. The youngest among the 13 was 16. The bodies were left hanging as a warning. The regime called it justice. It called them criminals, gangsters, enemies of the state. What they were was this: a group of people who had looked at everything Nazi Germany offered them and said, with their bodies and their choices and ultimately their lives, "We refuse." After the war ended, the Edelweiss Pirates were largely forgotten. And that forgetting was not accidental. In West Germany, the dominant post-war narrative needed a particular kind of resistance story. Organized, clearly moral, unambiguous in its heroism. The White Rose students. The officers of the July 20th plot. Figures whose opposition could be easily framed and honored. The Edelweiss Pirates were harder. They were working class. They were disorganized. Some of them had committed violent acts. The lines were blurry, and in post-war Germany, blurry lines were uncomfortable. So, they were left out. For decades, the families of the Ehrenfeld 13 struggled to have their loved ones officially recognized. The German state resisted. Some of the executed had minor criminal records, and authorities argued that this complicated their status as resistance fighters. It was not until 2005, 61 years after the hangings, that the city of Cologne formally rehabilitated the Edelweiss Pirates and recognized the Ehrenfeld 13 as victims of National Socialism. 61 years. There is a question that haunts the history of the Third Reich, and it is this: what did ordinary resistance look like? Not the dramatic coup, not the secret network with Allied backing, but the daily, grinding, personal refusal, the choice made by a 16-year-old in a bombed-out city who had every reason to comply and chose instead to sew a flower on his collar and keep showing up. The Edelweiss is a mountain flower. It grows in places that are cold and exposed, where conditions make growth difficult. The people who chose it as their symbol knew something about that. In our next episode, a man who kept a list, and the list kept thousands alive. The story of the accountant the Reich never should have trusted.